It's Friday, January 27th, 2023. Welcome to a new backcountry snowpack summary brought to you by North Shore Rescue. During the month of January, we have lost 5 lives to avalanches in the BC interior, and we would like to begin this week by offering our condolences to all that are affected by those tragedies. Meanwhile, on the North Shore in the Sea to Sky area, this week was blissfully quiet on the avalanche front. We did get a little bit of new snow last weekend that brought some really good skiing condition, and since then everything has settled quite nicely. Now we are headed into a cold snap, which is not immediately going to increase the avalanche hazard, but will probably cause a little bit of problem for the future when the next storm comes in. So this week in the snowpack discussion, we'll talk about near surface faceting, so stick around. We're at about 1,200 meters on a west aspect, just below the summit of Hollyburn Mountain. And what we have on the ground is not a whole lot different than what we had last week. So we still find this wet snow that's way down at the bottom here at 135 centimeters. Now it has started to form a crust right at the interface with the snow from last week, but if you dig a little bit deeper, it gets wet pretty quickly. And now we started off with the theory that the storm snow from last week, like that 100 centimeters that fell last week, was well settled. So we tested the column, and that seems to sort of confirm what we thought. And we don't really have any major concern in that snow. Now, last weekend we did receive about 20 centimeters of snow. It's really difficult to tell the interface between the snow that fell last weekend and the snow from last week. And that interface doesn't really seem to produce any results, and it also hasn't produced any avalanches. Now, this weekend, we're looking into a forecast that looks like green brick, which is pretty good. On the surface, we do have a little bit of a brittle crust. I mean, depending where you are, that crust would probably be like almost non-existent to probably quite supportive. And we're heading into a cold snap. So while this weekend and probably well into next week, we don't really anticipate the avalanche hazard to increase, the cold snap that's coming could potentially cause some issues in the future. So what's happening when we have these cold, dry period, that when you have a snow crystal in the snowpack, 3 things can happen to it. It can melt and refreeze into a crust. Or it can round up, meaning that it turns into like a little ice ball that tends to bond really well to other crystals around it, which is essentially what we have in that storm snow that's not producing any test results or any avalanches. Or it can also form facets, and facets are much more angular and they don't really hold on to each other very well. And what drives the change in the snowpack is the temperature gradient. So typically when we have weak temperature gradients, warmer temperatures, that kind of stuff, it tends to round up and bond very quickly. When we have these cold, dry snap, it tends to form facets. So we expect the surface snow here to really kind of lose its cohesion and become quite weak. Now that's not a problem until it gets buried. So it's not really going to affect the avalanche hazard this weekend or into next week, but it's certainly something we'll have to keep an eye on for the coming storm. Another thing that we are probably going to see is a little bit of surface hoar growth at night. So when we have those cold, clear nights, we have hoar frost on the snowpack. Now, in order to get good sized crystals, we need to get high relative humidity, which doesn't really seem to be the case in the weather forecast. So the surface hoar will, in all likelihood, happen, but the crystals are probably going to remain fairly small. So ultimately, no real concerns. Totally agree with the green brick here for the weekend. The crust, if you manage to find a place where it's quite soft and breakable like here, the skiing is still quite enjoyable. So it's a good weekend to go out. It's going to be beautiful and sunny if you bundle up. And then we're going to keep an eye on that surface, see how it develops, and track it until it gets buried with the next storm coming, wherever that is. That's all I got for this week. Stay smart, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.